Human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, now creating over $236 billion in illegal profits each year. That's up 37% since 2014. And North Carolina is not immune. In fact, we consistently rank among the top states in the U.S. for the number of reports to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Something has to change. What many of us in the anti-human trafficking field have come to realize, what survivors have told us, and what research has shown, is the best way to prevent human trafficking is to address those individuals who are fueling the crime, the buyers. The North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force was created to do just that. The mission of the task force is to create and execute a comprehensive plan to reduce the demand for the services of exploited persons in North Carolina. We envision a North Carolina where there is no demand for the services of exploited individuals. We invite you to stand with us. Let's work together to combat human trafficking in our state. For more information about the task force and our demand reduction efforts, please visit ncdemandreduction.com.
Well, good afternoon and welcome. We are delighted to have you here. The first thing I'd like to do is just remind you a little bit of where we have come from in terms of this series and where we are headed. So this is our third webinar series. We started out with sort of an introduction to the idea of how technology impacts demand and human trafficking to begin with. And then last week, we dove a little bit deeper into that. We met the folks from the Invictus Project who are working on specifically commercial sexual exploitation of children in sort of the triad to western part of the state, 4 different counties working on that together. Also had someone from Homeland with us. And today we are coming to the part that I think is always the most interesting and the most exciting, which is when we have people who have actual lived experience who are sharing their knowledge about this particular topic. So we are just honored to have with us a couple of survivors as well as a couple of service providers. And our facilitator for today is Nikki Miller, and she is going to be here in just a moment. So as we wait for her, I'm going to ask each of you not to go into detail right now. If you'll just tell me your name and your organization super briefly, and then we'll go more in depth once Nikki gets here. So, oh, Nikki is here. Hi. So Lisa, I'm going to let you start.
Hi, I'm Lisa Stezak, and I have lived experience, as you said. That's why we're on here today. And I also have an organization called Worthy Women Healing, where we teach women how to welcome triggers so they heal their mind, body, and soul from trauma and can have peace and clarity on next steps to take in their life. So thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Ashley?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Faison. I am based in California and the founder and CEO of Diamond Collective. Diamond Collective provides restorative experiences to survivors of human trafficking. I am a survivor myself and very excited to be here today and sharing knowledge with you all.
Thank you. Liz?
Hi, I am Liz Lyles. I'm the founder and CEO of Daughters of Worth. We are a nonprofit that provides direct services for girls and women who are victims of violence, specifically exploitation and trafficking, serving both minors and adults.
Thank you, Liz. And Kylie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Kelly, and I'm the North Carolina Operations Manager for A21. We're a global counter trafficking organization, but I oversee the operations and work that we do here based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we cover North Carolina, South Carolina, and kind of wherever we fit in between. So grateful to be here with you all today.
Thank you all so much for those brief introductions. And I'm going to hand it over to Nikki now.
So, Lisa, I'd like to start with you. Most people immediately think of kids online when we talk about those who are groomed through technology, but you want to warn us about another population.
That's right. And when I was asking God, what's your purpose for me with this webinar? He actually answered through you, Nikki, in that last email that you sent all of us. And I'm going to read what you wrote, that I fully believe God was just speaking through you. And you said to all of us survivors that we're going to be on today, I couldn't be more excited to have you pull back the curtain and expose what is happening so that I can no longer hide in the darkness. And that took me immediately back to a message that my trafficker sent me when he realized that he was about to be exposed and wanted to silence me. And I'm going to read that so you guys can get an idea of what traffickers say to us, right? So he said, my inclination will never be to degrade you or shame you, but rather erase you and make you suffer slowly and silently from behind the scenes. Kill you with silence. That's an actual text from my trafficker. So thank you, Nikki, for inviting all of us on today so that we all have this chance to expose what happened so it no longer hides in the darkness. And I want to start by asking all of you women a question. Have you ever been in a really low point in your life, maybe in your marriage or your relationship, and thought to yourself, maybe I'll just go on social media and check out that guy that I knew way back when in high school from years ago? Or maybe you actually did contact him. The reason I'm asking this question is because that is how my story began. Only I didn't know that I was about to contact what would become my sex trafficker. I was in a destructive marriage. We were in this destructive pattern that was happening. There was a lot of emotional and financial abuse happening. And one night at midnight, I decided on Facebook Messenger, I was new to Facebook Messenger, gee, I'm going to contact George, putting his name in quotes. And all I said was, hey, it's Lisa. Remember me? I'm married and I have a daughter. That's all I said to him. Almost instantly, George messaged me back on Facebook Messenger saying, of course I remember you. I remember your smile. And every time you turned around in typing class in high school, you distracted me. I'm married also and have a daughter. And I'm an executive producer for true crime shows. And I'm doing a show starring Linda Hamilton. And it's about kick-ass moms like you. And then he asked if I was also in New York. I responded back and saying, I wish I was in New York. Now, I gave him 3 vulnerabilities that he cracked wide open over the course of a period of time and distance in that brief exchange that I really want people to lean in and hear, right? First of all, I said I'm married. It's midnight when I'm texting him where I am. That's giving George the Predator this clue. Her husband's not there. He's absent. Something's going on with the marriage. That's vulnerability number 1. She has a daughter. So I'm going to say I have a daughter too, and I'm married. So now we have this commonality, and it seems more trustworthy because he's married and has a daughter also, right? He's also building me up, saying I'm this kick-ass mom. Now, I haven't talked to George in 30 years. We are not Facebook friends. For all I know, I could be a total deadbeat mom. But yet I'm doing a show on kick-ass moms like you. So he's already building me up. The third thing is I'm telling him, I wish I was in New York. Now Predator George is like, yes, I got her. I can pull her to New York willingly. I can lure her to New York. So he responded, he was in New York, I was in Arizona. It was 3 a.m. his time. This is the one thing I did right in this situation. I said to him, what are you doing up? It's 3 a.m. because he has a daughter and he's married. Like, why is he up at 3 a.m.? So he says immediately, hey, what's your phone number? Can we go to a more private thing? Because he wants to start sharing stuff with me, right? This is the way he's kind of luring me. So I'm like, okay, because trust is already built, you guys. Remember, I knew him in high school. I trusted him. So we get into the phone and he's texting, he's saying, well, I'm up because I'm doing a show on sexual abuse. And I'm listening to a survivor share her flashbacks in real time for the show. Now, I was like, what? That makes no sense. You're up at 3 a.m. listening to a survivor. And then he tells me her name. He said, she's someone we went to school with. Well, I didn't know her. I knew of her, which I thought was weird. But George was so good at the love bombing and the building up and distracting me that I kind of forgot about that. And he started talking about my smile again. Hey, can you send me a picture of your smile? Well, again, trust was already built. He had very little work to do with the grooming because trust was already built. And so, of course, I send him a picture of my smile. He responds by sending me a song, and the In Excess song. Do you guys know that song, Beautiful Girl? It's a very old song. But you see how he's requesting something and I do it, I comply, and then he rewards me. And this is the beginning of the intermittent reinforcement that's going to go on, right? Then every morning I'm sending him what he calls pillow pictures of my smile, and he's rewarding me with a song. Then it turns to, oh, you're in Arizona, send me a picture of your pool. Are you by the pool? He knows I just lost 80 pounds and got in the best shape of my life. Send me a picture of that hard-earned body, right? So then suddenly, though, I send a picture in the morning and George is dark. I don't hear from George. Where is he? My mind is going crazy. What happened? Did I do something wrong? Which is what they want you to think, right? So that's the intermittent reinforcement that's going on. And then suddenly he comes back with no explanation, commenting on a post that I did on Facebook. And he's in the beginning texting me constantly, right? FaceTiming me while I get ready, saying, you get up at 3 a.m., put me on the dashboard of your car so that I can make sure you get safely to work, because I'm at work at 4 a.m. I'm opening up a gym. And he keeps telling me from the start, do you want, in a really creepy way. Sometimes he'll get on FaceTime and he's just really creepy and kind of mesmerizing. I didn't see it as creepy back then. But he's like, do you want to be a star, Lise? Do you want to be a star? I'm your biggest fan. Because remember, he's an executive producer. So then he says, hey, why don't we do exercise videos of you and I'll produce the videos. This way you can make some money and get out of that financial mess that your husband has you in. He's telling me how the camera loves me. So he's getting me to do videos of my body, moving my body. He's prepping me. He's grooming me, right? And he tells me to put the videos in his Dropbox. And he gives me instructions how to do this and says it's his Dropbox. I have access. I can see the videos anytime I want. So he's building trust. This is grooming that's happening here. I didn't see it as that, of course, right? So then he asked me for a picture that I didn't feel comfortable sending. And he said, this is all in text, mind you. He said, I don't ask twice. I don't give second chances. He unfriended me. He went dark. He blocked me from Facebook, blocked me from everything. I had his email though. So because I'm so addicted to him, he's like a drug. That phone is a drug. It's a dopamine hit, right? And I'm jonesing for my drug. And I'm emailing him, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm apologizing. This is the beginning of me apologizing for him requesting inappropriate demands from me, right? And so then he very quickly says, okay, you know what? why don't I send you to New York? You're under a lot of stress. You have all this stuff going on with your marriage. I have this great apartment. And he starts sending me videos of the apartment and of him in the apartment and pictures. And he's like, this is going to be your safe haven, your oasis, really drawing me in. Remember, we already had that trust built. So for me, it wasn't a weird thing for me to be going off to New York. So I go to New York. And while in New York, he creates a different email for me, takes my phone and he creates a whole different email for me. This is how you're going to contact me now. He gave me a different name in his phone. He said, this is my special name for you. He gave me a new name. He put himself in my phone under a woman's name and said that, and then he erased any communication we had and said, I have to start doing that from this point on because we're married and we have daughters and we don't want this to be misconstrued as anything else that's going on. So again, I had to FaceTime him. Like when I got back from New York, I had to FaceTime him. I had to show him on my iPad, look, I erased everything on the phone so that he felt more comfortable. And you're my special secret, just like you were in high school, because there was a lot that happened in high school also. So then he becomes very critical about what I'm posting on Facebook and telling me, stop talking about your husband or stop talking about your daughter, just becoming very critical. And I'm still jonesing for it to go back to when it was in the beginning where he built me up on this pedestal. And then he starts sending sexual pictures of himself and saying, stop, don't be selfish. I need you to do the same. I've done so much for you. You owe me. So he's expanding my boundaries slowly over time and distance, getting me to do things that I never would ordinarily do. And then he has me uploading these videos to Dropbox and he starts weaponizing it. He starts saying, like, one day they're there, the next day they're gone. I start asking him what's going on with the videos. And he tells me he's got this whole website going with me on it. And he's got a great idea for me to make money and him to make money. And also for me to meet a man that will treat me well, because he can't treat me. He can't be there for me as anything else because he's married and he has a kid. And he just wants me to find a man that is going to treat me the way I deserve. And he says he is going to have men look at all my videos and all my pictures, and he is going to vet the men, make sure they take me to a nice dinner, and sex is optional. Well, I became furious. I said, this is insane. I didn't want to talk to him anymore. And then I'm going to read another text that he sent. I wish I could have put it on the screen so you guys can see. But he says, you are the only one I have ever requested videos from, Lise. And he calls me Lise from the very beginning to draw me in, right? So it's this like intimacy. It's like this little nickname. And I only brought up setting you up with other men since daddy can't give mommy what she needs. He started saying things like, you belong to daddy. He started doing things like that. I will screen the men for you. You can meet discreet in Phoenix. Sex always optional. I will keep you safe always. You can trust me. Then he starts demanding I find him a big-breasted girl. He's talking about threesomes and foursomes. And I feel sick to my stomach and I realize this is evil I'm dealing with. This is finally when I woke up and I asked him about whatever happened to the woman that you were doing the show on for the sexual abuse. I never saw that show come out. He starts yelling at me, profanities, telling me to mind my own effing business. It's none of my business. And I know instantly, I know God was working through me, and I contacted her because remember from our very first interaction, he told me her name. I wrote down her name. Why I wrote down her name, I don't know. I believe it was God, right? And so on Facebook Messenger, I said, I didn't say his name. All I said was, you don't deserve what he did to you. You are worth it. And she immediately called me back on Facebook Messenger, which I didn't even know you could do. And she said, did he do the same to you? And then she had confirmed that, yes, he was actually listening to her flashbacks in real time and taping them. And he was supposed to do a show. He never did the show. He was holding her media hostage. He would not give the media back to her. And that's when, we both realized, we compared texts and we compared pictures. He sent us all the same texts, all the same pictures. Other women from our high school started coming forward saying it was like the same situation. And he, like I said, he didn't have to worry about building up trust. Then I wrote a book, my best-selling book called Portal Tears, which describes the whole story in detail. If you want to read it, the link is in comments. And I didn't realize when I was writing the book, I was exploited or trafficked. It was my book editor that read it. And she said, read what you wrote. She said, you just thought you were dealing with a narcissistic person. This guy was a trafficker. He was exploiting you. And that's so true in cases of abuse. We don't realize it's abuse when we're in it. And we don't realize we're being trafficked and exploited. I'm talking about adult women, right? Clearly children don't understand, but married women, especially married women who are in abusive marriages, are very vulnerable to being trafficked or exploited. They're looking for the white and knight shining armor, right? Rescue from the depths of the hell of this marriage that I'm in. All these promises are being given to them. And the traffickers know they're going to keep quiet. I heard that all the time. You will shut your mouth, or you know what you're going to get at home. You will shut your mouth, or I will expose you to your daughter. So it's like married women have more to lose in the trafficker's eyes. So they are the perfect victim. He even told me that many times. You are the perfect victim. You are the perfect victim. So anyway, I have a podcast now where I help women share their stories, Worthy Women Healing Podcast, and I do a healing group. We take women on retreats, and I just can't thank you enough, Nikki, for letting me expose what was hiding in the darkness. And I want all of you to remember that you are worth it.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for sharing. And I know that's only part of your story, and I appreciate that insight. I'd like to move now to Ashley. And so, Ashley, you had mentioned an experience that you had with online predators and how they manipulate technology in order to exploit others. Can you talk about that? If you're talking, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. So
There you go.
I put together some slides for you all, and just a little background on me. I was a victim of CSEC, so child sexual exploitation, and I was trafficked from 16 to 19 years old. And it was both in the streets and online. And my story is one of many. There's, plenty of survivors that have different experiences than me, just as we've heard from Lisa. She so bravely shared her story so eloquently. And I just don't want to not say, like, my survivor story is mine alone. Like, all other survivors have their own experience. So please don't take this as like the end all be all, the definitive answer for survivors, or a definitive voice for survivors. I'm one voice. And so I want to talk about the misuse of technology in my own experience and some research that I did. So traffickers use social media against victims when they isolate them from their support systems, just like it says on the screen. And how my traffickers did this was making sure that they had control over my interactions on the phone, my profiles. They created multiple profiles using multiple phones. So how this is done is, like, on one phone, you're texting someone and your name is like Jane. On another phone, your name is Isis. On another phone, it's Angela. And there was different profiles created and attached to each different phone number so that they can get more clientele depending on what they like, what their preference is. A lot of traffickers, I had 5 different traffickers during my time being trafficked, and my traffickers used multiple pictures and profiles to create illusions of what buyers wanted to cause that, to increase the demand and put me on a silver platter. Some buyers don't go for it. They're like, this is a fake ad, they'll put comments, and then you just erase that ad and make a new one. And then some buyers, they would go into it, they would accept the date or whatever, set up the date, and the trafficker is controlling this. He's setting up the date on the phone and telling me an address to go to or taking me to an address. And there I meet a buyer who isn't expecting me, because it likely wasn't my pictures. It was some different profile pictures. But if you're, if you look okay enough, sometimes they'll be okay with it. If you're kind of attractive to them, they'll just say, I don't want to risk it possibly being undercover next time, so let me just take this girl. They didn't ask me for my age, anything like that. But there was a lot of isolation in creating these profiles and not even allowing me to be Ashley, right? I was Angela, Isis, Jane. I was all different types of profiles and different characters. So that was a way that they misused technology with me. So I did some research, and I'm learning that there are traffickers who are searching social media, searching the web, searching game systems for their prey, for their victims. And one of the things that they're doing on social media is they're looking for girls that are isolated, that they're not really with their family. There's no family interactions underneath their pictures. There's no comments. They're saying that they're lonely. They're saying that they're broke. They need money. They're heartbroken. Maybe they just broke up with their ex and they're posting breakup quotes or something like that. They're talking about they want to get married. One day they hope they get married. They're hoping for romance. They're showing their vulnerabilities online for these exploiters, for these traffickers to prey on. They're saying that they miss their families. So maybe their family isn't around. Maybe they're estranged from them. So they're putting themselves in a place that traffickers can fill a need, just like Lisa had shared, like filling those needs, filling those vulnerabilities. And they can search keywords and hashtags on social media to find these girls. Yeah, I think there was something else I wanted to, individuals with like triggers such as addiction, if maybe they're smoking and they, just like I said, they don't have the family support. There's the perceived isolation that maybe this person is someone I can talk to and she or he won't tell an adult, won't be communicating with a safe adult or with their family about our interactions. And they're just preying on whatever needs that they can fill. Another thing that I noticed is that emojis are really, really common for communicating online, just in general, but especially between traffickers, because they're trying to stay, in a code to try to prevent law enforcement or other people to know what they're really talking about. And some trafficking communications that I recently learned of from another survivor this is one of them. And I wanted to see in the chat, can anyone guess what this string of emojis means altogether? I don't know if anybody is sharing. Okay, nobody has guessed. So I'll just move forward for the sake of time. But here we have a rose, we have a camcorder, we have a heart that's like growing into a bigger heart. We have an airplane and a crown. And the translation is probably from a buyer or from a trafficker saying, pay money to record having sex with a minor who's being trafficked by a pimp. So they want somebody who's being controlled. They want somebody that isn't just rogue out there. Renegade is one of the terms for women who are sex workers. I have another example. Does anyone want to take a stab at this one? Oh, thank you, Natalie, for guessing. That was a really good guess. So on the screen, we have a camera, a camcorder, a mailbox, a flower, like a stop sign, and an umbrella with some rain. Anyone want to guess? Trying to give you guys some time to write. Okay, so we'll just move forward. So the translation for this one is send me pictures or videos of intercourse or sex with a minor virgin without any condoms or protection. And traffickers and buyers are getting away with saying stuff like this. And law enforcement is becoming more and more hip to the conversations. So I wanted to give you guys this screen too, so that you can maybe take a screenshot if you want to of what some of these things, some of the emojis mean, so that you can look out for them. The rose is for paying money. Sometimes there's diamonds. Record is, or the recorder, the camcorder is either recording or video. That growing heart is a minor. A plane is probably, it often means trafficked. A crown often means pimp, and so on and so forth. And some of the luring tactics that we see people do are their criminal activity, but a lot of traffickers are involved in other types of criminal activity than just trafficking. So one of my traffickers was really into credit card scams. He had a credit card machine, was making credit cards before they had the chip in them. And online, there's these like ads, usually on stories. If you're familiar with Instagram stories or Facebook stories, sometimes they're Facebook posts. They'll post like, we will take care of your bills and your flights will be half off. So if you send me 500, I'll put 1,000 towards your bills or towards a flight that you want to purchase. And they're saying, don't hit me if you're not payment ready, not trying to talk. So people get lured into these scams, but also when people respond and they're interested, they're showing their vulnerability. Obviously, they need money. So a trafficker can target them and say, there's other ways you can make money too, and lure them in that way. And then this is like a payment confirmation from a bank transaction, and it shows like proof. They're trying to show proof and be reputable and show that money is being transferred to certain people. They're trying to feed into the illusion that you could possibly have this money in your account too if you work with us. And then what we can do, these are some things that were just on my heart. We definitely need to educate our kids, make sure that they're aware of the conversations that are being had on social media, so they don't think just because you're trying to limit their screen time, just because you're asking who they're talking to, it doesn't mean I'm trying to pry into your personal business. I'm trying to make sure that you're making responsible choices online and that you're being protected. So another thing that I do with my son, he's 15, is I make sure that his apps, whatever apps he has to log into on his phone, I have the login information, and I'm usually logged in on my phone so I can see it in real time if he's talking to somebody, and I can cut things short if I see it going in a direction that it doesn't need to go in. And I check it regularly. It is a lot of work. We have busy lives, but taking that time to educate and protect our youth is really important. And then engage with our youth online. I don't think that they should have social media accounts, but in this day and age, they're either you're going to let them and monitor it, or they may sneak behind your back. There's a lot of that happening, right? They might just create a new one because you're saying that you don't want them to have it and you're just deleting the account. They could just create a new one and hide it from you, and you don't want that. So if they do have an account, engage with your youth, make sure that you're talking to them. Any youth that you know, if they're in your family, if they're outside of your household and you know about them, comment on their posts, engage with them, talk to them, so that traffickers can see that there's people that care about them. You know, they're not isolated. They're not the youth that they can target, because people are checking in on their social media accounts and checking in on them in general. Sorry, keep GPS tracking on, of course, if your youth have cell phones. If they're outside of your home, I know it's really, really hard to do, but encouraging youth to give somebody their location, a safe adult their location, is really important. And then report suspicious pages. If you see some of those luring tactics, like send 500, I'll, send you 3,000 or whatever. Report those pages, report the scam pages, because it's likely that they're not just doing that criminal activity. A lot of traffickers are involved in other criminal activity as well. And then we can hold big tech accountable. So when we are reporting accounts and trying to get them knocked down, like, follow up, make sure that they took the account down, or write them, try to write their corporate offices. And I think if enough of us continue to do that, that it's really going to help with legislative action. If, they're being told, this is a perpetrator, this could possibly be a perpetrator, I'm worried, they're sending these emojis, they're communicating with youth like this. It looks like trafficking situations, and they leave those accounts up, they're doing something wrong. They're putting an injustice in this world, and legislative action can make sure that there's, laws and limits imposed so that they can't continue to do that and hurt us. And then also I looked up in North Carolina, there is a task force. You can contact the ICAC task force and report any suspicious activity online that looks like it could be trafficking, and it can be, it can be, my son just came in here, but it can be investigated. And then of course the North Carolina demand task force, contact them, get them involved, make sure that they're aware of the warning signs that you're seeing online, so that this doesn't keep happening. Even if you report it once and it helps one person, like, there's over 6.3 million people being trafficked at any given time in worldwide. So you could, if you stop one, that's one less out of that 6.3 million figure. So I think that was, these are some of the laws that you can, sometimes I get creative, and I send people with weird profiles laws all the time so that they can read it, so that hopefully whenever they do get caught, they can't say that they didn't know, and just kind of scare them a little bit. But there's these different laws that are in place to protect our youth, to protect online safety, and make sure that you're aware of these, make sure that your kids are aware of these. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for that presentation too. I'm a visual learner, so that was helping me, especially with those emojis. Some of those I didn't know. So very, very insightful. And in the beginning, you said you just have one voice, that you're just one voice, but you're doing so much with your one voice, and you didn't even tell everyone. Like, you're not only are you supporting other survivors, but you also advocate for a legislative change, including that California Senate Bill 1414 that was just passed to increase the penalties for those who are soliciting minors. And I know you train and you work as an expert consultant with law enforcement. So yeah, you do so much with your one voice, and thank you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I'd like to move now to Liz. So Liz, you mentioned something that I was not aware of. Now, Liz is a direct service provider in North Carolina. Um, and she is noticing a disturbing trend of youth luring and trafficking other youth.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to come and to share with you. So just a little bit about us. I had shared that I'm with Daughters of Worth. We are based out of North Carolina and serve really throughout the state. We've currently served about 20 counties, but we also do relocation. So we've got survivors currently in 10 different states. So that work often looks like prevention education, where a lot of these have been identified, as well as providing the direct services for girls and women who are victims of trafficking. And so I'm providing those services. So our Empower Her Prevention Education currently serves about 500 girls a month. We are in 28 different schools. And one of the things that we have found as we were doing the trafficking prevention and also an assessment to be able to identify girls who are vulnerable or who have been solicited, was we found that in just one school alone, that out of 16 youth that we were working with, 9 of those girls had actually been trafficked, but they were trafficked by other youth. And I think it's something that we are seeing an increase, not just from that particular school, but across the board. Our youngest trafficker to date is 12 years old. And so how that often looks is you have a girl who is inviting another girl over for a sleepover. So they're going to come and they're going to hang out. She is, hey, come over, let's, just spend the night, come and have the weekend together. So she invites her friend to come and to just hang out for the weekend. Mom's there, mom provides pizza. They're just been in town together. It's late, mom goes to bed. And shortly after, we all like to shop, right? I've got my list of things, my Amazon list. And I think a lot of us, especially as it comes close to Christmas, we've got our list going. And so these girls are looking online and finding all the things that they want to purchase. And so this young girl basically says, I don't have money. I don't have a way to be able to purchase this. And so she says, I have a way. I have a way that you can make some money. And I can show you how to do that. And so within that particular weekend, this 12-year-old girl begins to take explicit photos, videos, and to submit those to a variety of different sites. Her brother, who's down the hallway, is 19 and part of a gang, is a dealer. And so the 12-year-old goes to her brother, knocks on the door, says, hey, we've got some hits. And so while mom's asleep, thinking these girls are just having a sleepover, the 19-year-old, the 12-year-old have got my girl in the car. They are feeding her drugs, and they are now running her throughout the county to go and to meet these different individuals for sex favors. As these men are paying, the 12-year-old takes the money. She gives her brother gas money, drug money, gives the girl money to buy the things that she wants, and then she takes the rest of that. We have seen not only situations like this, we have seen situations where a young girl is, and we're talking about middle school age. We're talking, the common age is 12 to 14. You're talking about girls who have got a little boyfriend at school, right? And he wants a new video game. This was another one of the ones that came up. That he wanted a specific video game. She did not have the money to be able to purchase that for his birthday. And he says, that's okay. I have a way that you can provide this. And so here I'm going to introduce you to my friend. And he says that if you will do this thing, then he's going to give us this money. And then you can go and purchase the game, and you can even come back and play with me. So there are several different scenarios of how we have seen this operate. But unfortunately, we were seeing an increase, and I think that we're going to continue to see that. I would offer that The youth who are doing this have probably also experienced extreme victimization, exploitation themselves. So I'm sure that you're looking at trauma history across the board. We often you're going to find that those who are being trafficked have got that sexual abuse intersection that has happened. So that's one of the things that we are often seeing. The other piece that we look at a lot or come into contact with a lot is the familial trafficking, specifically with minors. Other than the youth trafficking, other youth, we find that familial trafficking is happening where we have a mom who is going to sell out her daughter for drugs, for cash, for rent, utilities. I've had a girl sold out for pizza. I've had a girl sold out for a pack of cigarettes and $20 bill. Not just moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, those that they trust and love, and the people who are supposed to be nurturing them, guiding them, caring for them. Oftentimes, again, it's generational. It's something that person has experienced in their life. But we'll find that they will use that intersection of technology. So many stories where there has been unlimited supply for unlimited dollars. So mom has a crack addiction, and in order for her to get her high, she is going to exploit her daughter. And you hear me say daughter, I want to just say that trafficking can also happen to boys and young men. We know that the rates are higher for females. I think we also have probably an underreported number, as we have underreported numbers across the field in this, but because we are daughters of worth and serve females, that's just why you're hearing me say she and her a whole lot in that space. But we often find that it will be the families who are creating those different accounts, who are coaching, instructing, or creating, posting the sites, posting pictures, videos of their children, and setting up the dates themselves and how they're going to operate that, whether that's having them come directly to the home for the exploitation or they are moving them from location to location. Each situation looks very different, but there's certainly a high increase with your familial trafficking. One of the things that I think was from a positive standpoint, because there was a whole lot of heavy content that takes place around this particular topic. But one of the, I guess you could say, success stories, a positive feature that has come from the use of technology. We had a young lady we were serving, it was a few years ago. We are often the first phone call when a girl or a woman is wanting to get out from her pimp. So we actually have a full operation relocation team. We do the safety planning. We assist with safe exits. So we go into that trap house, that motel, we coordinate, and every situation looks very different for how we operate that. But once we get her out, we're going to make certain that she has emergency shelter, medical care, hygiene, food, clothes, everything that she's going to need. Once that we have her out, she's going to be provided with all of those essentials. And then we also provide the advocacy, case management, documentation recovery, care coordination, trauma-informed mental health services, and then conduct relocations. So this year alone, we have done 47 relocations already. So this particular girl, again, just like many of the other stories, meets this guy and immediately just kind of falls in love with him. He's telling her all of the things that she wants to hear, and she believes him, and ends up coming into a space where she has moved in with him. And in a very short matter of time, what she thought was a relationship and a place of stability and support and having her basic needs met, essentially unraveled to her being held. He confiscated not only all of her documentation, her phone. She was, controlled. She did not have a way to communicate, and she was one of the ones that was stationary. He had her essentially kind of locked in a specific room and had her working out of that particular room. She was not given access to leave. She ended up, he also had a daughter who was in that home. And so our girl somehow was able to find a tablet that belonged to his daughter. And so she found it and she hid it in that room. And she had known someone who was working with our team. And so she reached out directly. So she got the tablet, she downloaded Facebook Messenger on it, and began to send us messages to our team through that app and asking for help. And so it was a process of probably a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks tops, where we were communicating back and forth. We never knew when she was going to be able to communicate, but she was able to give us bits and pieces of information at a time that we were able to identify where she was, how many girls were there, what her situation was. How many pimps were there, how many enforcers were there, things of that nature. We were able to receive the information needed in order to conduct that safety plan. And so after a few weeks of working with her, we were able to successfully help her exit. So she has now been out of the life for the last few years. She is doing phenomenal. So very proud of her, but it was incredibly powerful to see the use of technology being taken back and use it in a way to give power and a voice for a survivor that she was able to find freedom and hope for her life. And we are just, it's a blessing that we even have the opportunity just to be a part of that journey. I also want to say, just out of the gate, because I think a lot of times in this space, you hear so often the terms being used, oh, that she was rescued, or this agency rescued her. I think it's so important to note that no one has the power to rescue anybody. We have the privileged blessing and gift of being able to be trusted and to walk into a space where a survivor entrusts us. She's making the bold, courageous decision to flee for her life, to find that freedom, because it's a very hard decision to make. It's terrifying. There are so many things on the other side of that have to come through. And so I think it's important for us, even as service providers or for those who are in the field, or even discussing it, to recognize that no provider has the power to rescue. It is these young ladies who are, and women who are the ones that are truly finding that freedom for themselves. Two other things I wanted to just mention briefly in this space is that you hear the term a lot about, of course, we know that men often are traffickers, but I think it's important to note that women are also traffickers. And we have certainly seen an increase in women. We have even seen most recently, we have had a mom and daughter who were solicited online through a woman who portrayed to be a pastor. And so she actually has a church and has a theological degree and holds different messages online. And so she was able to build relationship, again, all of those vulnerabilities, with a mom who was in a very desperate situation and who trusted her, and of course came in and said, hey, my husband and I want to help you. We want to provide you with a place to stay. We want to help you and your children and get on your feet, and made all of these promises to our mom and family that they trusted her. And so she ends up providing a ticket. Mom and her kids come over, and then they quickly end up being both labor and sex trafficked by this woman and her husband through the church. And so it's been, so we've seen a lot of that, as well as job opportunities. Those who will use those different intersections between relationship, the promise of a job opportunity, the promise of a better life. I can talk way too long on all of these different topics. I'm sure we all can. I'm just passionate about it. So I think it's just crucial, again, just to kind of echo the same sentiment as everyone. If you've got kiddos, just be paying attention. Watch who they're connecting with online, who they're gaming with. I know recently, Daryl, even with NC Stop Human Trafficking, was just talking recently about the number one method for a lot of kids is through roadblocks, and how many of our kids have got that's even offered in schools. And so that again is another recruiting tool. So some of these spaces that we think are safe as our kids are gaining, as they're connecting with people online, we've become so accustomed to looking for that white van, right, that comes in the snatch and grab, which is only happening about 1 to 2% of cases, where you're going to find that the majority of this is coming through the people that these kids trust and love, whether that's through the family, through the relationship, through their friends, their peers, through a pastor that they have met online. So many different ways that it can happen. But I will put my information in the chat. I did not bring, obviously, a presentation, but you can go to our website and learn more information. And I will put my information in the chat so that if you want to reach out directly, you can do so.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you for making those distinctions about our language, because our language, the language that we use in talking about human trafficking is important. Especially if we are if we're anti-trafficking, advocates, people are going to look to us, and we need to make sure we're using language that reflects reality. So thank you for that. And let me just tell you, Liz is amazing. She is, the more I've worked with her, we don't, at Shield, North Carolina, we don't offer direct services, but being in this field, we still get calls from people that need help. Because they're just not sure who to reach out to. And so we do network and refer. And there's been times when I'm not sure what to do, but I will call Liz, and no matter where in North Carolina they are, it seems, Liz will say, okay, I'm going to drop what I'm doing. I can be there in 2 hours. And I know she's getting in a car right then and coming to pick them up. And it's just, her heart is amazing. So thank you, Liz, for all the work you do. So now I would like to move to Hannah, who also does amazing work through Present Age Ministries. So Anna, when we talked, you had mentioned you were seeing a lot of technology being used to traffic teens who run away from home and end up being missing kids. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Absolutely. So just to introduce myself, I didn't get a chance to when we were doing the first round. I am based in Charlotte, and we Present Age Ministries has been around. We just celebrated 15 years, and we only work with minors. So we just have a history of understanding just this population and watching trends change over time, and how things, what seemed maybe was prevalent 10 years ago, maybe is not so much now, and just watching the time and season that we're in. And I also have the distinct privilege of getting to be the chair of the Charlotte Metro Human Trafficking Task Force. It was originally initiated to be housed by Congress in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and since has such moved out and is its own entity. And so I get the beautiful privilege of not only understanding the world as an executive director of an NGO that's providing services, but also how to systematically leverage partnerships at a city level to really see true transformation and change. So that's my lens as I talk. I'll flip back and forth between those worlds and understanding that. But yes, Nikki, to your point, one of the things that we see often in this population, and if you work with especially minors for more than one day, there's this reality of, we call it happy feet. When we work with our girls, because so many of them have the prevalence of adverse childhood experiences in their life well before trafficking happens, or as a part of their initial childhood trauma, there is this reality of fight, flight, or freeze. And when you're a child, you don't always know to fight back, or you don't know to always fawn or freeze. So a lot of times you want to get out of there. And so often there is a connection and a correlation between the trauma that they've experienced and then the need to get out of a situation. When we train people all the time, we are telling them, what are they running from, not who are they running to? Because the reality in this world is that someone is going to be there, right, to scoop up this vulnerability. So it's more of why are they running in the first place? And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of statistics. I'm a For those of you that know anything about me, I'm a little bit of a data nerd. I think that it's really just your opinion unless you can prove it. And so it's really like, that has been part of my passion of like, how do we help a community that's not engaged in the day-to-day, like all of us are on this call probably, but how do we tell the story that helps people understand truly what we're working against and what we're seeing? And so I wanted to give you a few statistics. This is from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. In 2023, NCMEC received more than 400 reports of missing children who had run away with co-occurring endangerments involving exploitation and sex trafficking. So again, these are reports, and we all know that with children, most likely, I would say 95% of the time, if it's up to somebody, a professional, to recognize it's happening. Rarely does a child recognize that what's happening to them is trafficking. Just as you heard our living experts see, even the report, they didn't recognize it themselves, even as they're telling their stories sometimes. So there is a responsibility on us as professionals to know what we're seeing and not have provider bias and not have these this filter that skews our perspective of what we're seeing, especially with our kiddos that we're working with. 1 in 6 of more than 28,000 cases of children reported missing in 2023 were likely victims of sex trafficking. And so again, nobody's calling saying, hey, can you add me to your data because this happened to me? We're learning in hindsight, but hindsight has to teach us how to do better as we go forward. And that's a big heart and passion of mine of going, let's let the data that we're learning drive us to better solutions versus just going, man, I wish I would have known that 5 years ago or 2 years ago. And one of the ways that Present Age has taken that on is we have been fortunate enough to be contracted to develop curriculum for elementary schools and middle schools. So if anybody's interested in curriculum that is not only rooted in experiences from survivors, but has also been helped develop by survivors. And those of us that have been in this industry, please, I'll put my contact information in the chat. Please reach out. But it has been created K-5 as well as 6-8 in adherence to North Carolina educational standards so that it can be deployed in public school systems. And we are already getting feedback by the school systems that have deployed it, that it is resulting in positive identification of abuse. And what that does is that 7-year-old doesn't know that what's happening to them is abnormal until they know and have the vocabulary to say it's abnormal. And part of what we know about victims of trafficking is that when they don't have the connection and the resources and even the vocabulary to identify abuse early on, we know that 70 to 90% of those that are trafficked have a history of abuse and specifically sexual abuse. So we're really trying to go after to what you've heard from all of the incredible panelists is how do we take what we're learning and get ahead of it so that we can really start to interrupt victimization before trafficking occurs because we know the vulnerabilities, we know what to look for. So how do we leverage that knowledge, not just for the sake of knowledge, but to really cultivate change in our communities and our cities? The other thing that I just wanted to piggyback off briefly was what good friend Liz was saying about familial trafficking. And there is a great report that recently came out by the Institute for Shelter Care that studied familial trafficking. And the entire study was just around what happens in familial trafficking. And they gave some great information about the intersection about familial trafficking as well as with technology. And they reported that in 50% of the cases, it involved some sort of technological or pornography element to it. And so we know that there is this intersection happening, and very, very rarely, I'm going to read the quote, let me find it. But it says, now watch me not be able to find it. I'm looking at the document in front of my face. But it said something about the fact that because it's happening within the home, it's so easy to also, whether it be videos or whether it to be pictures, to be a part of that exploitation because it's just so accessible. And so with 50% of cases of familial trafficking from this research, also including an element of technological exploitation involved, I think it's something that, again, that we just have to look at and go, okay, when we're interacting with those that have experienced this, how does that change our approach and our response? And or how does it inform our programs and our solutions that we're putting in place. And I'll leave you with one more thought, and then I'll turn it back over, because I know there's so much goodness that's being shared. I want to make space and time for this. So while I was not ever trafficked myself, I was a child that had 6 aces, right? So everything was leading up to and sitting in the room of traffickers, right? So there's this reality of what vulnerabilities put us in situations to be exploited, regardless of the what and the how. And I think it's so important that, Liz made the reference of the, 12 to 14 being the average age. What we see in the Charlotte base is the exact same thing. Our average age, we do an annual report of what we're learning about minor victims of trafficking that is multidisciplinary. It includes law enforcement reporting into it, YFS, our healthcare system, Department of Juvenile Justice. And so we really are like digging into what we're learning. And our average age is 13 years old, right? If 13 years old is the average age that we're identifying it, then what does that require of us to get ahead of that? And I think it's so important to understand what someone who is experiencing exploitation is also bringing into that narrative that they need help with, that they may not have the vocabulary for. If that's one thing that I've heard over and over and over from the hundreds of girls that we've worked with over the years, it's like, I wish I would have known and how to communicate that or say that in real time. And so I think part of what we can all look to for solutions is also like, how do we educate and give language to, and I'm going to say normalize abuse, not for the sake of it being okay, but helping kids understand how to talk about it and not it being swept under the rug and not being like, oh, well, that's just what happens in families, but really giving language to like, no, like that should have never happened to you. And how do we start to shift that narrative so they feel safe and they feel like they can have those conversations earlier and earlier, because then we all know when there's safety, then they can start to heal. How do we start to create environments that are safe for our kids who are experiencing abuse or experiencing vulnerabilities before they start to compound on one another? And then it just is so overwhelming. They don't know how to navigate those situations. So I would just echo also what Ashley and Lisa and Liz have said, that there's a reality of this, the complexity and intersection of what we're seeing with our kiddos specifically, and women and male and female. But there is such an intersection with technology and the use of it and how it's used to have a far-reaching impact than I think a lot of us realize, especially with AI generation and fraud being now incorporated into it. We had a situation of a staff member's child who, this is our world, we do this every day, all day, and a staff member's child was sent a fraud scam of send me this money, and if you don't, I'm going to send this picture. And a picture was AI generated of them in the nude. It wasn't them at all. It was AI generated, but it was their face on a body. And again, what happens when that goes to a vulnerable child who already has felt exploited and already felt abused? It's one more thing to add and compound on it. Fortunately, this child knew what to do and came, and we were able to deal with it. But what happens when that resource and that lifeline isn't there? And so conversation is so important, and equipping families and communities to have those conversations is vital so that we can reverse the stigma of shame around it and reverse the impact of what happens, and not taking the guilt and the responsibility on themselves as a child that's not rightly theirs. So I just really appreciate you guys allowing me the opportunity to share and what we're learning here and what we see. And I'm just grateful for all the work that everybody is doing, because it really does take a village to fight this and combat this.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, you brought up AI, and that adds a whole different level of ways predators can exploit. And in North Carolina, if you guys aren't familiar, North Carolina recently passed some legislation around exploitation in AI. I applaud them. They're very forward thinking in that. I would say you guys should look that up. It was just this past session. And also, I love that you are data driven and rely on evidence-based information to speak to your approaches. I am such a numbers person, and it drives me a little bit crazy because there's not a lot of numbers there, you know, especially in North Carolina. There's no way to know how many cases, how bad is the problem, what areas of North Carolina have it, you know, worse problem. And that drives me crazy. And I know for you too, like, I know we want those numbers so that we can use that evidence to speak into our programs and approaches. So hopefully we will get better at that as a state. Yes, so thank you, Hannah, for speaking today and sharing that. So our last but not least speaker is Kaylee from A21. So in helping to prepare the whole series, when we're talking about the technology and its intersection with the demand for human trafficking, you know, we always want to have labor trafficking spoken about, so we can educate people on labor trafficking as well. And what we found is most labor trafficking cases, at least domestically here, people are recruited through word of mouth and often by people within their own communities. But no, Kaylee, and speaking with Kaylee has some experience with how technology is used in other ways in labor trafficking. So we've asked her to share that. So Kaylee, I think you're muted still. So I don't know, Pam, if you are on, are you able to unmute her? Seems she's having some trouble. All right, well, Kaylee is figuring that out. I will mention that we may or may not have time at the end for questions, but if any of attendees do have questions, if you could drop those into the Q&A, and we'll present those as time allows. And also, we did have a couple of questions in the chat about what we are going to provide afterwards. So I just took some notes. We're going to provide the contact information for those speakers who want to share that. And the curriculum information for present age, I think, would be very helpful. I'll provide a link for that. Ashley's presentation, there is a link in the chat, but we'll also provide a link. The number for the North Carolina ICAC tip line. And then I'm going to look up that Institute Shelter Care research that Hannah mentioned and provide that in our follow-up email as well.
And
All right,
Nikki, I am
yes, there you
so sorry
are.
to everybody. So my camera was on, everything was fine. And then I went to go unmute myself and my whole screen, everything but my camera was frozen. So as we're doing a webinar on technology, I feel like it's only fitting that I had just major technological issues. So I appreciate the flexibility and all of that. And so yeah, as I said at the beginning of the webinar, my name is Kaylee Kelly and I work with the A21 campaign, A21 for short. We're a global counter-trafficking organization, but I mainly focus my efforts here in North Carolina, and our office is based similar to Hannah's in Charlotte, North Carolina. What things look like globally trafficking wise is completely different, whether you're in our Thailand and Cambodia offices or South Africa offices, or even across the US. And so what we see a lot within the realms of labor trafficking within our North Carolina office is about 50% of the survivors that we serve tend to be victims of labor trafficking, as well as those from other countries. Mainly right now, we see a large trend with those coming from Central American countries, which is pretty similar to the data that we're finding in statistics from the Polaris Project, from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Polaris released a report in 2021, indicating that 23% of the cases that they identified were labor trafficking cases, and 4% of the cases were sex and labor trafficking cases. Out of the victimology that they broke down, about 8% of those cases were in the agricultural field. 48% were males that were labor trafficking survivors, and about 73% of labor trafficking survivors were from other countries. And so a lot of the individuals that we're working with, yes, we know, we see it, we have our numbers, we have our anecdotal data, but then to be able to see that across multiple platforms, those trends are still things we're seeing, even across our state. In 2023, the National Human Trafficking Hotline reported that in North Carolina, about 23% of cases were labor trafficking cases, a majority of them taking place in restaurants, food industries, domestic work, others. And so we just continuously see these trends over and over again. And so typically, when we look at the intersections between labor trafficking, the foreign national community, and technology, what we see oftentimes is individuals in their home countries, especially if we're dealing with the foreign national community, being approached regarding various work opportunities, immigration opportunities, really through word of mouth, through recruiters that are in those countries. Usually they're a family friend, someone that's known somehow through an extended resource. And so it's someone that there's a base level of trust there, even if it's a friend, to say, hey, so-and-so that I know got a job from this person. Again, a lot of word of mouth. But where technology comes in within that recruitment process and with false job opportunities is really work contracts, false work contracts within labor trafficking. That's something that oftentimes we see a lot of times taking place, where these conversations regarding job opportunities are happening in really informal settings on social media, in apps like WhatsApp, simply texting regarding the work that's going to be done, drafting a contract through these means, and then having the survivor agree to these terms via social media or WhatsApp and things like that. So therefore, they believe that they're in more of a formal contract. And so that's one of the things when we're going through education with particularly our labor trafficking community, as well as our foreign national community, is when they are looking for work, when they're looking for employment, when they're in the process of applying for visas, because oftentimes when we work with these individuals, they're applying for legal visas, H-2A visas, which is in the agricultural sector, H-2B visas, which is seasonal employment. These are legitimate legal visas that are bringing them to the US for what they feel are work opportunities. But what they're not realizing is that because of the lack of knowledge of cultural norms and work appropriateness and all of those things within the United States, they're not realizing, hey, you can't create a work contract through social media. You can't create the steps that you're going to follow for your visa protocols through social media, through WhatsApp. That's not acceptable. You need a formally drafted contract. Do you have someone to look over that contract? Is this employer following the terms of this contract? And so those are a lot of the things we see in the technology field when it comes to this avenue in this context within the US and North Carolina. We actually assisted with a case out of South Carolina for the Department of Justice, and it was an agricultural case involving over 30 males that were recovered on a farm in South Carolina. And again, a lot of them were recruited through word of mouth opportunity regarding a farming opportunity that they could apply for an H-2A visa and come to the United States and make some money for a temporary term to be able to send home. These were all formalized, and I put that in quotes, through social media, through WhatsApp, through these typical communication streams that we see a lot of. And so for all intents and purposes, these individuals thought that these were legitimate opportunities. They came, it was a group of over 30 males. They came, and unfortunately their documents were taken from them. They were forced to live in suboptimal conditions. They were forced to live in a 2-bedroom home altogether where the sewage had busted. There was deceased animals everywhere. It was just horrific living conditions. And they didn't have the means to know any different because they thought that this was a legitimate work contract that they were a part of. And so, and again, I think that as a result, what we've seen, even after these individuals have left and gotten restorative services and all of these things, they're still to this day will get text messages from some of them. Some of them returned back home to their home country. Some of them stayed within the United States to pursue a certain type of visa. And so we found that a lot of them will present us with job opportunities to say, hey, I just got this job opportunity sent to me, or I saw this link online. Something looks a little bit odd about it. What are your thoughts on it? Because now they're keenly aware of opportunities that just don't look right. Sometimes there's certain job recruiting websites, not necessarily through sites that we see like Indeed or LinkedIn. A lot of those larger partnerships have really done a lot of work to combat false job opportunities and to make sure that all the resources on their websites are credited. But we will find random ads or things that will pop up on the internet for false job opportunities that oftentimes then get clicked on and pursued, only to discover that they're just in fact false. And again, we see this trend a lot throughout the entire globe. But oftentimes we see things now. There's a huge uptick in the use of AI for scamming for jobs and false job opportunities. We're seeing a lot of heightened in our Southeast Asian countries, a lot of heightened instances of scam call centers where people that are actively being used for labor trafficking in these call centers are then being forced to recruit others through calls to come and then work, and the cycle continues. And so we're just finding that traffickers, just in any form of trafficking, continue to get more and more creative and leverage this technology to their advantage. And so with labor trafficking, it's no different. It's continuously used to be able to exploit individuals. And so that's a little bit, very slight, minimal, succinct overview of what we see. But those tend to be the trends that we see within the intersection between labor trafficking and technology. So it might start off word of mouth, but then there may be an ad that's seen online and things are really formalized in their view about the trafficking situation via technology. And so that's how things are used there.
Thank you. Sorry, I was not being allowed to unmute. I apologize. Yeah, so thank you, Kaylee. I was going to ask you, what are some of the things that they are putting in these fake contracts that are keeping them there? I know it's so hard, especially for foreign nationals that come in. They don't really know the culture or the language. They're presented with a contract that they think is completely normal. What are some of the things you were seeing that are in these fake contracts? And if you could unmute Kaylee, Pam. I'm not sure what's going on with Zoom today.
Totally understandable. I get it. So typically what's in these contracts are typical information you would see in a job description. So a little bit about what they would be doing during this job, basic contact information for the employer, relative location information, nothing that would look too suspicious as far as verbiage goes. However, there are things that when now looking back on it, spelling errors, the fact that it's even being conducted over social media or WhatsApp or some sort of communication website, the fact that there's not an area for them to sign. And so there's not like a formal signature page or anything like that. Oftentimes too, especially if it's within the foreign national community, there'll be information regarding the visa process in there. So it might be, hey, bring your passport, this, that, and we'll take care of the rest whenever you get here. So there appears to be a level of knowledge on behalf of the sender of recruitment and job opportunities and job knowledge and the immigration process and all of these things. There is sometimes a big flag that we might see is recruiting fees. Oftentimes there's fees that the recipient or survivor is then required to pay the recruiter in order to get them that job or get placed in that job. So these are all some of the things that might not look uncommon when they're first viewed, but then once we kind of go over, hey, here's some of the red flags when looking through these job contracts, it starts to realize that even just the fact that there's a job contract being sent over a social media website, that in itself is a red flag. So not necessarily the content within it, but lack of a signature page, like just some of these things that are red flags. But then on the opposite end, the actual content regarding the job and all of that stuff appears to be fairly normal. So there's not really anything that's super alarming at first.
Okay. Well, thank you. I have learned so much today, and I know our attendees have as well. Speakers, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And I trust that many of the attendees will incorporate your wisdom into their anti-trafficking efforts. So our next webinar, our final webinar, is on Wednesday, and it is regarding legislative partnerships. And we'll have representatives from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, Iggy Ventures, and Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn's office. And they're going to highlight national legislation that has recently passed or is being discussed that aims to prevent technology-assisted exploitation. So that is our final one on next Wednesday. So if you're interested in that, please go to ncdemandreduction.com to register. All right, you guys should get some more of this good information in our follow-up email. But until then, I hope you have a great week. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Pam. Do you know if we'll have like a debriefing call? I see some attendees are still on, so I don't want to talk.
I don't know if that is Nikki's plan, but I can suggest that to her if you think that would be a good idea.
Okay, I'll try to call her right now.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you too.
You too.